Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Midlands online worship service. My name is Maxine Getler and I am the worship associate for this morning's service. If you haven't already, please type into the chat box who you are and who you've brought with you today. Unitarian Universalism is a welcoming and inclusive religion. It encourages us to keep open hearts and minds because our own experience, conscience, and reason are the final authorities in religion. It affirms the inherent worth and dignity of every person and that we are all connected to each other, to the earth. If you are visiting us today, a special welcome to you. We appreciate you spending some of your Sunday morning with us. If you have any questions, please let us know in the chat box, by phone, or through our Facebook page. If you've been attending for some time and have come to feel that this is your spiritual home and you are considering becoming a member of the fellowship, please contact our minister, Reverend Eric Severson, or a member of the welcome team, or let us know of your interest in the chat box. If you have a chalice or candle at home and would like to join in our chalice lighting remotely, now would be a good time to get that ready. We will be including joys and sorrows this morning as we normally do during the service. You will want to find the participant icon to raise your hand for that. And we will move on now to announcements. You will see them on your screen. Next week's service is An Invincible Summer on January 24th. French philosopher Albert Camus once wrote, "In the midst of winter, I finally learned that there was in me an invincible summer. During this time of unease and unrest, let us be grounded and heartened by the enduring strengths we already possess." Led by our minister, Reverend Eric Severson. Would you like to be a part of our award-winning ministry team? The worship team is looking for new members. You would attend meetings via Zoom on the third Thursday of the month at 7 o'clock to 8:30 p.m., help plan lay-led services, and help recruit volunteers for worship roles. The team is also looking for someone who might be interested in taking over his chair in 2022 and would join the team this year in preparation for a smooth transition. Send an email to Sarah Nusswarren at nusswarren@gmail.com to join or get more information. Please help the engagement team complete the UUFOM Neighborhood Storybook Project. Packets were mailed in November 2020 asking participants to add a story or pictures to a small booklet and then to mail on to the next participant. The pandemic, national events, and the holidays have made this a very busy time, but we are hopeful the booklets will continue to move through the neighborhood groups and find their way back to us. Thank you for your help in completing this activity. In case you missed it, Shanna Barth has accepted a position as UUFOM's online RE coordinator. She will be working with Reverend Eric and the RE team in a limited online capacity to sustain virtual RE while we are in transition. She will be co-moderating our UUFOM Parent Circle Facebook group along with fellowship member Lisa Janetsky. RE Zoom sessions will resume on Sunday, January 31st at 1 p.m. More information should be available soon. Exploring Unitarian Universalism is a pilot project developed by the engagement team. There are 5 virtual workshop sessions. The first session is Saturday, January 23rd. They are limited to 10 participants. You may attend any number of sessions. Registration is on a first-come, first-served basis. Registration and further information can be found in our weekly newsletter, on our website, and on our Facebook Friends group. Watch your email for more announcements in our Candle Flame newsletter. During the winter months, the newsletter will be circulated on Fridays. If you wish to submit an article, please email it to Wendy Altmeyer at office@uufom.org by Wednesday at 5 p.m. to have it included in the upcoming issue. If you have a candle or chalice at home and would like to light it now, please do so. Please join in reading our chalice lighting words today by the late Reverend Dr. Orlando Bruniola. Flame, friend of our most ancient ancestors. We kindle you now to make you visible in this time. Yet, in truth, you burn always, in the unique worth of each person, in the imagination, in the turning of the heart to sorrow or joy, in the call to hope and in the call to justice. Burn bright before us, burn bright within us. Now Eric will share our opening words.
Maxine. Our opening words today are titled In Heaven by the Reverend Mark Bellatini. Ah, it's true. When our ancestors spoke of heaven, they were speaking of this moment. When they went on about nirvana, they imagined a time like this. When they sang of paradise, it was this morning, they imagined. A time when all the mysteries of life and death are blended into a community of praise, when the bones of ancient lovers are given flesh again in our own bodies. Teachers of long ago speaking of love and truth once more in the lives so ordinary they are extraordinary. Blessed is our breath, in and out, quiet. Blessed is our sitting, our fidgeting, our movement. Blessed is our heartbeat, echoing the pounding alleluias of the distant stars. Blessed is the silence that is a presence, not an absence.
Thank you, Eric. With your mics muted, please join Melanie Willison and Reverend Eric Severson in singing our opening hymn, number 123, Spirit of Life, with words and music by Carolyn McDade and harmony by Grace Lewis McLaren.
Our story today is The Frog Prince by the Reverend Christopher Bice. I wore a special tie just for the occasion. I don't know if you can see it. It does have frogs on it. I invite you to listen carefully and closely because it is a very brief story. If you blink, you might miss it. There once was a little girl who was walking beside a creek when she happened to see a frog that looked very sad. I wonder why the frog is so sad, she asked herself. Then she remembered a story once told by her mother about how a girl had kissed a frog and how the frog had magically turned into a handsome prince. Maybe that is why the frog is so sad. No one will kiss it so that it can become a prince. She decided that she would give the frog a kiss herself. But nothing happened. There was still just a frog sitting in her hand. She set the frog back on the ground and said, "Poor froggy, I'm sorry I couldn't turn you into a handsome prince." The frog replied, "Oh, but you have done something far better. You have made me a happier frog." And the frog hopped off with a great big smile on his face. So if you're walking through the woods one day and happen to see a little girl picking up frogs and kissing them, don't try to stop her. She knows what she's doing. Frogs need love too, you know. You may not be able to see the frog change on the outside, but believe me, a little love and attention makes everyone feel like royalty on the inside. And please join in a time of centering and reflection, meditation, or prayer. Today's meditation is by the Reverend Dr. Jane Rzepka. O Spirit of life and renewal, we have wintered long enough, mourned enough, oppressed ourselves enough. Our souls are too long cold and buried, our dreams all but forgotten, our hopes unheard. We are waiting to rise from the dead. In this, the season of steady rebirth, we awaken to the power so abundant, so holy, that returns each year through earth and sky. We will find our hearts again and our good spirits. We will love and believe and give and wonder and feel again the eternal powers. The flow of life moves ever onward through one faithful spring and another and now another. May we be forever grateful. Hallelujah. Amen.
Thank you, Eric. Our reading today is excerpts from Stumbling on Happiness by Daniel Gilbert. Harvard University psychologist Dan Gilbert says our beliefs about what will make us happy are often wrong, a premise he supports with intriguing research and explains in this accessible and unexpectedly funny book. For most of recorded history, people lived where they were born, did what their parents had done, and associated with those who were doing the same. Millers milled, smiths smithed, and little smiths and little millers married whom and when they were told. Social structures, such as religions and castes, and physical structures, such as mountains and oceans, were the great dictators that determined how, where, and with whom people would spend their lives, which left most folks with little to decide for themselves. But the agricultural, industrial, and technological revolutions changed all that, and the resulting explosion of personal liberty has created a bewildering array of options, alternatives, choices, and decisions that our ancestors never faced. For the very first time, our happiness is in our hands. To see is to experience the world as it is. To remember is to experience the world as it was. But to imagine is to experience the world as it isn't and has never been, but as it might be. The great achievement of the human brain is its ability to imagine objects and episodes that do not exist in the realm of the real. And it is this ability that allows us to think about the future. Our ability to project ourselves forward in time and experience events before they happen enabled us to learn from mistakes without making them and to evaluate actions without taking them. And yet, as impressive as it is, our ability to simulate future selves and future circumstances is by no means perfect. When we imagine future circumstances, we fill in details that won't really come to pass and leave out details that will. When we imagine future feelings, we find it impossible to ignore what we are feeling now and impossible to recognize how we will think about the things that happen later. Foresight is a fragile talent that often leaves us squinting, straining to see what it would be like to have this, go there, or do that. There is no simple formula for finding happiness, but if our great big brains do not allow us to go sure-footedly into our futures, they at least allow us to understand what makes us stumble. Now, let's share in an interlude, Coppelia Waltz by Leo Delibes, played for us today by Melanie.
Thank you, Melanie. In these difficult and dreadful times, it is imperative that we maintain a lifeline to happiness of our own and of others. As I mentioned last week, ours is a curious species, and I meant that in both senses. Dan Gilbert, the authority on which we draw for today's service, declared in his book, Stumbling on Happiness, that the human being is the only animal that thinks about the future. I know some of you may argue about other sentient life forms, but that's the premise. Given that Gilbert is a Harvard University psychology professor, I presume he knows a thing or two about Homo sapiens. The human brain's greatest achievement, he wrote, is not designing and building the pyramids of Egypt. Seeing and remembering, he wrote, are far more remarkable. But more remarkable still is our imagination. This is the worship theme for this month, imagination. To see, he wrote, is to experience the world as it is. To remember is to experience the world as it was. But to imagine, to imagine is to experience the world as it isn't and has never been, but as it might be. The greatest achievement of the human brain is its ability to imagine objects and episodes that do not exist in the realm of the real, And it is this ability that allows us to think about the future. Gilbert calls this ability prospection, as in, what are our prospects? We have this ability to think about the future thanks in large part to the evolutionary development of the frontal lobes of our brains. Our ability to project ourselves in time, he wrote, and experience events before they happen enables us to learn from mistakes without making them, and evaluate actions without taking them. Gilbert describes study after study. I don't know how many hundred of footnotes there are in this book, but he describes about our ability to imagine our lives in the future and our potential happiness. And, I quote, because most of us get so much more practice imagining good than bad events, we tend to overestimate the likelihood that good events will actually happen to us, which leads us to be unrealistically optimistic about our futures. Great, I said sarcastically. Have we not wintered enough? Our meditation asked today, have we not mourned enough, oppressed ourselves enough? Given the state of the world these days, the only solace I can find in this news about our unrealistic optimism is that it applies to all human beings equally and everywhere. We are all in this together. So here lies the problem, wrote Gilbert. We might expect people to do quite well when it comes to making life's most important decisions, such as where to live, where to work, and whom to marry. And yet the average American moves more than 6 times, changes jobs more than 10 times, and marries more than once, which suggests that most of us are making more than a few poor choices. We are not as successful at predicting our future or our happiness as we might think. Why and how? Well, it begins with our intelligence. We have a tremendous amount of information at our fingertips and the technical and biological hardware to process it. Knowledge is power, wrote Gilbert. And the most important reason why our brains insist on simulating the future is that our brains want to control the experiences we are about to have. We find control of our lives rewarding, pleasurable, and gratifying. Being effective, wrote Gilbert, changing things, influencing things, making things happen is one of the fundamental needs with which human beings seem to be naturally endowed. And much of our behavior from infancy onward is simply an expression of this penchant for control. It's one of the things that makes us happy. On the flip side, this fundamental need also is why a lack of control during the pandemic is so discomforting. We want at least a measure of control over our lives. But, wrote Gilbert, we are beset by illusion. Just as we experience illusions of eyesight and illusions of hindsight, so too do we experience illusions of foresight, he wrote. And this is because imagination suffers from 3 shortcomings. Let's look at each of these more carefully. Imagination's first shortcoming is its tendency to quickly, quietly, and effectively fill in and leave out details without telling us. Often, wrote Gilbert, the futures we imagine contain some details that our brains invented and lack some details that our brains ignored. The problem isn't that our brains do this, it's that they do it so well, we aren't aware that it's happening. Perhaps, for example, you wonder why you make commitments that you deeply regret when the moment arrives. You agree to babysit next month and genuinely look forward to it. But when the time comes, you wonder what you were thinking. You were thinking about babysitting, wrote Gilbert, in terms of why instead of how. You failed to consider the fact that your imagined detail-free babysitting would not be the detail-laden babysitting you would ultimately experience. Babysitting next month, said Gilbert, is an act of love, whereas babysitting right now is an act of lunch. Expressing affection is spiritually rewarding in a way that buying French fries simply isn't. Imagination's second shortcoming is its tendency to project the present into the future. As noted earlier, when our imagination paints a picture of the future, many details are missing. Our brains solve this problem by filling in the gaps with details that it borrows from the present. For example, looking forward, you or someone you know may get a tattoo because you are confident that death rocks across your forehead will always be appealing. Or, for example, looking backward, if I were to ask you middle-aged couples out there to remember what you thought about premarital sex, how you felt about political issues, or how much alcohol you drank in your youth, your memories are influenced by how you think, feel, and drink now. Most of us have a tough time imagining a tomorrow that is terribly different from today, wrote Gilbert. We find it particularly difficult to imagine that we will ever think, want, or feel differently than we do now. Imagination's third shortcoming is its failure to recognize that things will look and feel different once they happen. In particular, studies show bad things will actually look and feel a whole lot better. For example, when you imagine losing a job, you imagine the painful experience. But we often fail to imagine how our psychological immune systems will transform the meaning of the event. Oftentimes people will say, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Gilbert wrote, imagination has a hard time telling us how we will think about the future when we get there. It's interesting to me that the word happiness, as well as the word imagination, for that matter, appears nowhere in our 7 guiding principles or their 6 sources. And yet the sentiment of happiness is there, implicit and implied through words like peace and liberty, celebrate and harmony, compassion, wonder, and love. Those suggest happiness. I try to apply a lens of Unitarian Universalist theology or tradition to each week's topic. But this week, on happiness and imagination, I was somewhat stumped. Perhaps, like last week, there's some grounding in our understanding of science. Perhaps there's a tie to process theology or liberation theology or mysticism. I just didn't know. On its face, our living tradition seems to offer not much in the way of a solution to the problem. Gilbert wrote that foresight is a fragile talent that often leaves us squinting, straining to see what it would be like to have this or go there or do that. There is no simple formula for finding happiness. But if our great big brains do not allow us to go sure-footedly into our futures, they at least allow us to understand what makes us stumble. We are at least that smart. So if our imagination is so unreliable, how might we more accurately discern our future happiness? Gladly, Gilbert offers a solution, though he says most people never take advantage of it. Studies suggest that it might require that we rely instead of, imagination, that we rely on other high function skills and abilities, such as communication and cooperation. Gilbert wrote, when people are deprived of the information that imagination requires, and are thus forced to use others as surrogates, they make remarkably accurate predictions about their future feelings. The best way to predict our feelings tomorrow is to see how others are feeling today. The average person doesn't see themselves as average, wrote Gilbert. Most students see themselves as more intelligent than the average student. Most business managers see themselves as more competent than the average business manager. 90% of motorists consider themselves to be safer than average drivers. That's a scary thought. And 94% of college professors consider themselves to be better than average teachers. Most of us believe we are less biased than average, too. Yes, we are unique individuals, but we are not nearly as unalike as we are similar. Stop with the self-reliance already. The accuracy of a surrogate's in-the-moment assessment of their happiness might surprise you. I have a theory that this is why we now see so many online reviews of every kind, restaurant or lodging, tools or services. We find them valuable in predicting our future happiness. This is us using surrogates. I'm getting used to a certain amount of chaos and uncertainty in the fellowship's various systems brought on by this pandemic. I can't say precisely what will happen in the next 6 to 12 months. But I do agree with Gilbert that one of the keys to ensuring our future happiness is by paying close attention to our communication. And this line of thinking, meandering as it is through aspects of community, may be the closest link to a Unitarian Universalist theology. It reminds us of our increasing interdependence and even a striving for shared liberation. We are all in this together. Tomorrow we celebrate the life and ministry of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., so it is perhaps some of his famous words that can tie all this together and hold the greatest meaning for us today. Some of you know the quote I'm about to say, that we are bound together in a single garment of destiny, and that no one is free until we are all free. May the spirit of life and the flame of imagination burn bright within us. Like the little girl in our story today, may we, in our interdependent web, strive not to transform people, but to simply offer our love and attention. And like the frog, may we too find happiness and delight in the love of others. Like our ancestors, when we imagine heaven, nirvana, or paradise, may we too imagine a time when the mysteries of life and death are blended in a community of praise. May the spirit of ancient lovers find new life in generations to come, and may love and truth again be taught to render all our lives extraordinary. May we be blessed in our breath, in our sitting, our fidgeting, our movement, in our heartbeats echoing the alleluias of distant stars, and blessed in the silence that is presence, not absence. Our happiness is in our hands. May we find our hearts again and our good spirits. May we love and believe and give and wonder and feel again the flow of life that moves ever onward through one faithful spring and another. Blessed be, and amen.
We affirm the work of this fellowship and its mission through our financial contribution. We continue to rely on you paying your pledges and providing what you would otherwise drop in the collection plate. While our in-person activities may be suspended, our staff continue working hard to provide the services we need. They and the bills need to be paid. Please give as generously as you can, and may what you give bring you joy. Please take this time to write a check if you wish and mail it to the fellowship at 6220 Jefferson Avenue, Midland, Michigan, 48640. To donate online, please stay after the service for instructions. Thank you for your generosity. Let's share now in an offertory Papagano's Magic Melody by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, played for us today by Melanie. Thank you, Melanie. Now, with your mics muted, please join Melanie in closing with an African American hymn, number 95, There is More Love Somewhere.
Thank you, Maxine, and Eric will be joining me in this as well. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep somewhere there is more hope, somewhere there is more hope, somewhere I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
Thanks again, Melanie. Our closing words today are by the Reverend Jane E. Malden. Now may the love of truth guide you, the warmth of love hold you, and the spirit of peace bless you, this day and in the days to come. Amen. Thank you to everyone who helped make this service possible today. Thank you all for joining us. If you can stay to chat, great. If you need to go, we'll understand. Whatever you may encounter in the coming week, please know that the love of this community goes with you. Until we're together again, many blessings.
As always, if you prefer to write a check, please make it out to UUFOM and send it to 6220 Jefferson Avenue, Midland, Michigan, 48640. To donate online, please visit www.uufom.org and scroll to the bottom of the page. Click on the yellow donate button and enter your information. Another option is to set up bank autopay, which can be arranged by emailing our treasurer, Tim Wagner, at treasurer@uufom.org for the UUFOM checking account number, and then having your bank set up a regular payment from your account. Thank you. If you choose to stay to chat, Zoom will randomly assign people to breakout rooms. If you have any problems, please return to the main room. We invite you to answer the question, how does your happiness today compared to years ago? Breakout rooms will close at 12 p.m. If you are joining us by telephone, please use *6 to unmute. I will unmute everyone before opening the breakout rooms. Thank you for your patience.